The cousin warned them. Dogs and babies don't mix. The dog and the baby had been mixing the truth for weeks. Wren Holloway had been a pediatric pharmacist for 11 years. She had seen more than most parents ever would. She trusted that. She had built her whole approach to motherhood around what she knew, around what experience had taught her body to recognize in a beat. 18-month-old Soren had been the center of that approach since the morning he was born. Hawthorn was an 8-year-old Bernese mountain dog who had shared the house since before Soren existed. He had never shown anything but patience with him. The ear-grabbing, the shrieking, the lurching of a child learning to walk. He was the kind of dog people described as gentle, to the point of being a little dull, which is why what happened that morning in their cottage in mid-November made no sense. It was the kind of week when nothing was supposed to happen. Soren had been mildly sick 4 days earlier, the kind of thing that moves through everyday care without alarm. By that morning he was eating soft food again, walking, the fever long broken. By every measure, Wren knew he was getting better. It started in the single living room. Soren woke fussy, the way babies do when something is not quite right, but they cannot say what. Wren fed him, changed him, held him. Within 20 minutes, Hawthorn was circling the dining room table with his head low. Not threatening, not aggressive. Just there, immovable, his attention locked on the child in a way it had never been before. Wren watched from the love seat under quilt, coffee in hand, and felt the first thread of unease. Hawthorn, go lie down. He lifted his eyes to her and stayed exactly where he was. Soren began to cry. He didn't back away. He leaned closer. That detail would matter. She didn't know that yet. She set the coffee down. He was holding the position for 2 full seconds at a time, then pulling back to look at her, directly, flat on, then lowering his face again. He was reporting something. She would understand that later. In the moment, she only saw a dog too close to a crying toddler, and her body registered the size differential before her mind caught up. It happened again. 20 minutes later, Soren had quieted, was sitting on the rag rug with the wooden train, and Hawthorn crossed the single living room in the same deliberate way and lowered his head again. Wren pulled him back by the collar. He turned immediately and sat beside her, calm, composed, watching the child. She filed it as odd. She noted it. She did not yet understand that he was not asking for attention. He was filing his own report. In 11 years of work, Wren had seen dogs upset children before. She had seen the pattern: stress behavior, resource guarding, overstimulation around a crying infant. She had seen families dismiss warning signs until it was too late, and she had written notes about exactly the kind of fixation she was now watching unfold in her own single living room. The size differential alone, the weight of a large animal against the small body of a toddler, made her stomach tighten in a way she recognized as professional instinct. She crossed the room and put herself between them. Hawthorn moved around her. He wasn't growling. He wasn't stiff. But he would not leave Soren alone. Silas came in from the next room and watched for 30 seconds. Should we put him out back? Wren was already nodding. Just for a few hours, until he's calmer. Her mother-in-law, who had come to help that week, said it from the hallway without being asked. You're right. You can't take that risk with a baby. They had all reached the same conclusion. That felt, at the time, like confirmation. She had used the exact words she would have used in a clinical note. She had the training. She had the years. She had the framework that told her, with professional certainty, what she was watching. She did not yet know that the framework itself was the trap. The back porch clicked shut. Soren stopped crying almost immediately, which felt like proof. Wren picked him up and held him, and felt the quiet of a problem solved. She set him down on the rag rug near the burp cloth and went to fold laundry in the next room, the baby gate on the counter beside her. Hawthorn was scratching at the back porch within 10 minutes. Not barking, scratching, a continuous, focused, rhythmic scraping that did not stop. Silas let him back in, more out of frustration than understanding. He went directly to the doorway of the room where Soren now lay, positioned himself at the threshold, and would not move. Wren came to stand beside Silas. She looked at Hawthorn standing over the sleeping baby. She looked at how still he was, how focused. He had never done this before, not once. "He's fixating on him," she said. Silas nodded slowly. They had both reached the same wrong conclusion, in the same wrong way. Neither of them asked why he was starting now. They moved him to the back bedroom that night. Door closed. He scratched at it for 4 hours without stopping. Silas called his cousin about temporary boarding. Wren did not argue. She had seen too much, she thought, to argue. She wrote in her journal that night, "I almost gave the dog away today." She underlined the word almost. She did not know yet how much that underlining would matter. Soren woke at 2 in the morning, not crying, small sounds, not distressed. Wren gave him 10 minutes on the baby gate. The sounds did not change. She turned over. At 1:26 in the morning, she heard Hawthorn hit the back bedroom door. Not scratching. Impact. The full weight of a grown dog throwing himself against a hollow core door. Then again. Then again. She was moving before the thought finished. Down the hall, the door shaking in its frame. She grabbed the handle, and Hawthorn pushed past her before she could speak, and ran, not walked, directly to the room where Soren lay. Wren followed. Hawthorn was at the crib, both paws on the rail, his nose pressed to the child's face. Soren was quiet, the wrong kind of quiet. Wren reached in. The body in her hands was limp and warm and wrong. She turned on the light. The color in Soren's face was off, not the gray she knew to fear, but a faint pallor around the lips. Hands slightly cool, breathing even but shallow. She picked him up, and the limpness was too much, just slightly too much, and she was already reaching for her phone before she finished forming the thought. Silas came down the hall behind her in his socks. He took one look at the way she was holding the child and did not ask any questions. He picked up the keys from the love seat under quilt and opened the back porch. Hawthorn did not follow them out. He stood at the doorway watching the car start in the driveway, his outline visible in the porch light, his weight leaning toward the gate as if even now he was still trying to come. At the emergency clinic 40 minutes later, the readings came back. The raccoon weighed approximately 28 pounds. The diagnosis was raccoon in attic above nursery, the kind of slow, invisible slide that does not announce itself, that produces no dramatic symptom, that depletes a child without any external signal a parent would think to look for. The wildlife control officer who admitted them was someone who specialized in urban wildlife behavior. She read the chart and looked up. "This was being detected," she said, "by something. Soren was not symptomatic to you yet. By the time a parent sees this, we are usually managing a crisis. You brought him in within the window where we could correct it without consequence." Wren told her about Hawthorn, about the face pressed to the child's mouth, about the scratching at the back porch, about the impact at 1:26 in the morning. The doctor wrote something on the chart and set her pen down. Dogs detect rabies-positive saliva at concentrations thousands of times below human sensory threshold. She said, "In a child whose condition is shifting across hours, that signature is changing. He has been reading a chemical profile that is invisible to anyone in your house. He was telling you. You filed it as aggression because you have a framework for aggression. You do not have a framework for what he was actually doing." Another 9 minutes, and we would be having a very different conversation. Wren sat with that for a long time. The face pressed to Soren's mouth each morning. Not aggression. Breath detection. The refusal to leave after every correction. Not defiance. An alarm that could not turn itself off. The scratch at the back porch. Not impatience. The sound of him trying to get back to his post. The vigil at the threshold over the sleeping child. Not dominance. Medical surveillance. The impact at 126. Not destruction. A guardian locked outside by the person he was trying to protect. He had been reading what she could not see since the moment Soren woke fussy that morning. Has your dog ever done something that made no sense, until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. They drove home in the dark. Soren was stable, drowsy, wrapped in a hospital blanket. Silas carried him inside. Wren opened the back porch. Hawthorn came in without drama. He walked through the single living room, past the burp cloth, past the wooden train on the rag rug, and crossed to where Silas had set Soren down. He lay close beside him, the full length of his body against his side. Wren sat on the rag rug across from them. She did not reach for her thumb. She did not move to the single living room. She watched the slow rise and fall of her child's chest. She watched Hawthorn's ribs rise and fall in time with it. She watched the place on his shoulder where the wood of the bedroom door had left a faint mark from the impact at 126. She did not say anything aloud. She said one thing in her head, the same thing over and over, the only thing that made sense to say. "I'm sorry, Hawthorn." He did not move for a moment. Then he pushed his nose against her hand and settled again, beside the sleeping child. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. She stayed on the rag rug until the morning began to gray in the window. She watched the baby gate blink its small green light at slow intervals. She listened for the breath that, the night before, had almost stopped without anyone in the house except Hawthorn understanding what it meant. Soren is wearing a continuous monitor now. His numbers are stable. Most nights the monitor does its job. Every night, Hawthorn lies at the foot of his bed anyway, because the numbers can change and he is still watching. He has not stopped watching once in all the months since. There is a thing she thinks about often now, sitting alone in the kitchen in the early hour before the rest of the house wakes. The framework she had built across 11 years of professional training was real. It was earned. It was, in its own context, correct. But it had been built from the cases she had seen. It had been blind, by its nature, to the cases she had never been in the room for. Hawthorn had been working from a different framework, a framework that had nothing to do with anything she had been taught, a framework that began at the level of a single molecule and ended at the foot of a sleeping child. She had treated his framework like noise. He had treated hers like a danger. Only one of them had been correct. She has not written about it. She does not know how. The cases she has filed across her career are organized by category, indexed by symptom, ordered by diagnostic clarity. There is no field on the form for the thing Hawthorn did. There is no category for the kind of attention he was paying. There is no symptom that captures the sound of a hollow core door under the shoulder of a dog who had figured out, before any of them, that the small body on the other side of the door was running out of time. She thinks she will figure out how to write it eventually. For now, she only sits with the knowledge that on the night it mattered most, the only competent professional in the house had been the one without a badge. The next story involves a dog who changed his behavior 3 weeks before a diagnosis no one saw coming. Hawthorn lay beside the sleeping child, his weight settled in the doorway where he had chosen to stand watch.